Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now we have a pretty serious topic to talk about today, but I'd love if you just gave me 30 seconds to talk about my channel really quickly. First of all, I got a ring light. Hey. I decided to splurge on it. Hopefully the video quality is better today. I'm using this lapel mic and I don't know if I'm going to keep using it. In the last video, it picked up like an extreme amount of buzz from somewhere. I don't know. And just in general, I am working on getting things together to have a better setup for both YouTube and Twitch. But it's slow going. I don't really know what to do, especially about my background. Like I literally don't have anywhere better to film in the house than this little corner, and I don't know how to make it pretty. So in today's video, we are going to be talking about a channel on YouTube called Sexplanations, and specifically one video that I saw on their channel. After considering myself a fan, I watched this video and I immediately unsubscribed. Now, the host of this channel is a person named Dr. Lindsay Doe, and the Sexplanations channel is hosted on the DFTBA network. That's the Don't Forget to Be Awesome network, which is owned by Hank and John Green. Now look at the title. Yeah, Hank and John Green. So I don't know, if you guys want to tweet this to them or send it to them on social media or whatever, I would love for the video that I'm going to be talking about today to be taken down, because honestly, I am shook that it's still up on John and Hank Green's network of all places. So before I get into it all, I have to give a few trigger warnings. When I first saw this video, I was furious, and throughout the process of scripting for this video and planning it, I remained just livid. And so this might stir up some emotions for you. So just make sure you're in a good place for it. Trigger warnings for discussions of pedophilia, paraphilia, sexual orientation, mental health, and as well as mentions of suicidal ideation. So please take care of yourself and only watch this video if you're going to be in a good place for it and if you're not going to be triggered. I mentioned a second ago that this video made me really angry when I saw it, and for the record, right before I unsubscribed, I left a long comment under the video explaining pretty much everything that I'm going to talk about in this video, and my comment was removed. It was completely removed. I couldn't even see it on my own channel's comment history. I don't know if that's because of the nature of the topics. Some of the words were flagged, but everyone would have been using the same words in the comments, and if you scrolled through, all of the comments were positive, and the few that were critical were very like lukewarm, whereas I was like, and I included a lot of detail and argument in my comment, which just disappeared, so that was shady. So we're going to start by giving a little bit of context on Dr. Lindsay Doe. When it comes to her qualifications, she studied her Master of Science at the University of Montana in 2005. Then she received her Doctor of Philosophy in Human Sexuality from the then accredited Institute for Advanced Study of Human Sexuality. All of this information is coming right off Wikipedia. So there's a couple of really interesting words in that sentence. So yes, she's a doctor. No, she is not a medical doctor. She is a doctor in philosophy. Philosophy focused on human sexuality. And I was also curious about what the words then accredited mean. So I looked a bit further into it and I clicked through to the Wikipedia page on the institution that she studied at, and it says this: the Institute for Advanced Study of Human Sexuality was an unaccredited for-profit degree-granting institution and research center in the field of sexology in San Francisco, California. It had received accreditation from the California Bureau for Private Post-Secondary Education, that is the BPPE. However, the BPPE is not an accrediting agency. That approval was discontinued in 2014. In 2017, the Institute's attempt to renew operation was denied. Quackwatch, so a quack obviously is a a doctor who is not legitimate. Quackwatch identifies the institute as a questionable organization. Now, I'm not going to go any further down this particular rabbit hole because I don't know if there were real reasons why the institution was not allowed accreditation, or if it was more of a case of the powers that be not wanting to grant accreditation to a sexology institute because it's not taken seriously, or as the actual institute claims, it has to do with conflict with the state about their research and funding. So essentially, they didn't want to be like owned by the state through funding, such that they couldn't do what they wanted to do. One final note on the institution, though, is if they didn't want to be accredited because they didn't want anything to do with the state, then why were they accredited and it was discontinued in 2014, and why did they attempt to renew it in 2017? But anyway, in 2008, she opened a sexual health clinic in Missoula to help clients with sexuality or sexual difficulties. She was also an adjunct professor at the University of Montana, teaching on human sexuality from 2006 until 2014, but was let go due to budget cuts. She then started doing lectures all around the US in colleges about human sexual health and sexuality and safe sex and so on. It was in April 2013 that Dr. Doe partnered with Hank Green to start the show Sexplanations, which is a channel under the DFTBA network that focuses on human sexuality. Just to talk briefly about the kind of channel that Sexplanations is and the kind of host that Dr. Doe is. Dr. Doe in her videos is extremely enthusiastic and excited, almost to the point that it comes across a little bit weird, like it's a little bit intense.
I can eat a peach for hours. You decide which meaning works best for you, just be consistent, so that you and the people you're messaging are agreeing to the same terms. Can we agree that the eyeball refers to the last thing your genitals see before I put my...
But even still, she covers a wide variety of topics on the channel, and she does so without showing any kind of discomfort with the subject matter. She talks about gender, sexuality, consent, sexual pleasure, sexual health, sex-love relationships, and so on. And the excitement that she expresses about the topic that she's covering is sort of like in direct conflict with how those topics are usually handled, with a lot of shame and just a lot of discomfort. And that's why I was a fan of her. I enjoyed her content a lot. I would regularly watch her videos, at least the topics that were relevant to me. That is until this video entitled Virtuous Pedophiles. So Dr. Doe starts by introducing an organization called verped.org, which is Virtuous Pedophiles, and we will get back to them in a minute. But she then immediately says something which I take a great amount of issue with.
Virtuous pedophiles. Not virtuous as in they're better than everyone because they're attracted to children, but virtuous like having moral standards and a sexual orientation that they have no control over, like the rest of us.
Girl, Now, I want to talk a little bit about Verped because actually, surprisingly enough, the existence of this organization is not what I take issue with in this video at all.
I'm just gonna let Verped speak for itself for a moment. Main page, there's a testimony from a 20-year-old man who has been attracted to young girls since he was 13. But I need to speak to a therapist because I don't think I can get through this on my own. But if I talk to a therapist, he could report me because I have to talk about my attraction to young girls. I can't just keep saying, I'm fine. And I can't talk to anyone about my problem. I think about suicide a lot. On their frequently asked questions page, they say, how could society change to make things better? Verped responds, if a pedophile wants help, society should make sure that they get it before they harm a child.
So this organization, Verped, wants to create a space where people who are struggling with pedophilia can access help and support and resources. Help and support to remain non-offending. It specifically notes laws that are in place in some places that require psychologists to report their clients who speak to them about pedophilia. And if people are seeking help and they can't get it, they are less likely to remain non-offending, and more likely to really suffer with their mental health. And this I agree with. I have no problem with an organization that seeks to keep pedophiles non-offending and provide them with mental health resources. It's what we all want, for pedophiles to get help so that they don't hurt children. So Verped, I don't have a problem with. It's this that I have a problem with.
It's a paraphilia. You probably don't object to pedophiles because you're compassionate and rational. It's a sexual orientation like hetero, homo, pan, or asexuality. Verped is like the only way that they can spend time out of the closet.
I don't think so, sis. Now, in this short, under 4-minute long video, there is so much to unpack. My notes are what, like 4 pages long? So to start off, Doe draws a distinction between pedophilia as a paraphilia, which we'll come back to, and acts of child molestation, sexual assault, rape, etc.
I'm talking about pedophilia, not child molestation or rape.
In other words, she is saying that she does not support abuse of children, but she does support pedophiles, or people who identify as being minor attracted.
Pedophilia is the sexual attraction to children. It's a paraphilia.
So she has described pedophilia as a paraphilia. And if you don't know, paraphilia is a synonym for fetish. So she is describing pedophilia as a fetish. Now, the definition of a paraphilia is as follows. A paraphilia is the experience of intense sexual arousal to atypical objects, situations, fantasies, behaviors, or individuals. Sexual arousal may depend on the use or the presence of this focus. And then I would say that the definition of a fetish is about the same as the definition of a paraphilia. However, in some cases, a paraphilia can be diagnosed as a mental disorder or as a psychological disorder. Now, this is not to say that all fetishes are psychological disorders. It's quite simple. There are parallels for it in psychology, just like if somebody was experiencing anxiety, but it didn't really affect their life and they were easily able to cope, then that's one thing. Then you could have somebody who experiences anxiety and it is causing them some issues and they could benefit from psychological help or help from a professional. And then you have somebody who experiences anxiety to such a degree that it really has a severe impact on their life. And at that point, they can be diagnosed with anxiety disorder. So when it comes to paraphilias and paraphilic disorders, the site MSD Manuals puts it this way. When people mutually agree to engage in them, unusual sexual behaviors that cause no harm may be part of a loving and caring relationship. However, when sexual behaviors cause distress or harm or interfere with a person's ability to function in daily activities, they are considered a paraphilic disorder. Therefore, pedophilia is not a fetish because it involves children who are not able to give consent, and I hope I don't have to explain why not, and because it's also likely to seriously affect the life of the person who is experiencing that and their ability to form normal relationships and so on. Pedophilia is a paraphilic disorder. In fact, it is one of the top 3 most diagnosed paraphilic disorders.
Many child abusers are actually sexually attracted to adults, but they act out on children. Meaning you probably don't object to pedophiles because you're compassionate and rational, but you may loathe child molesters and rapists because they violate people.
So she says, you probably don't object to pedophiles because you are compassionate and rational. And first of all, lady, don't tell me what I think. Because, yes, I'm compassionate to people who have psychological disorders, and I am against child sexual abuse. I just want to point out the argument that she is building here for her audience who have largely been supportive of her for a long time and who trust her and value her opinion on all things human sexuality. She is saying that pedophiles are just people who have a fetish, and that if you feel icked out by pedophiles, you are not a compassionate or rational person. But then, in a bizarre plot twist, she follows it up by saying this.
Meaning you probably don't object to pedophiles because you're compassionate and rational, but you may loathe child molesters and rapists because they violate people. I personally try not to judge either. I just want them to get help and not hurt people.
Slow down. First of all, I judge them both. That's just me, personally. Second of all, I think we can safely say that one of these groups deserves more judgment than others, that being people who commit sex crimes against children. And I mean deserve more judgment both socially and legally. Thank you very much. She also contradicts herself by acknowledging that pedophiles need to get help, but she's described it as a paraphilia. So if they just have a fetish, why do they need help? Or is it that all people who have a fetish need psychological help? Honestly, this video is just a mess. I can't believe it's still up. I hope you're starting to get the gist of why I was so upset when I saw this. But it gets worse. Honestly, I think that the next part here is, in my opinion, the worst part of this whole video.
You probably know and are friends with a handful of pedophiles. It's a sexual orientation like hetero, homo, pan, or asexuality, not a choice.
No, 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 oh no. Go off. Okay. The leaps in logic that she makes here are actually unbelievable. First, she says, you probably know a pedophile. And then she says, it's a sexuality like any other. It's like, you probably know a gay person. You probably know a pedophile. What? Well, she goes and explains the connection and says that pedophilia isn't a choice and sexuality isn't a choice. Therefore, pedophilia is a sexuality. No, girl. I'm so sorry, but no. Dr. Doe really said map pride. So this thing where she says pedophilia equals not a choice, sexuality equals not a choice, therefore pedophilia is a sexuality, is an example of a logical fallacy called fallacies of association, where if A equals B and A equals C, then all B's are C. And in a lot of cases, it's not true. So you may have picked up that she has a couple of different, very different ideas at play here. We've got pedophilia as a fetish. We know that pedophilia is a paraphilic disorder, and she admits that herself when she says that pedophiles need to get help. And then we've got pedophilia as a sexuality. So these are four very different things that she is completely conflating throughout this whole video. So she would never argue that if pedophilia is a fetish and pedophilia is a sexual orientation, then all fetishes are sexual orientations. She would never argue that if pedophiles need help and have paraphilic disorders and pedophilia is a fetish, then all fetishes are psychological disorders. And she would never argue that if pedophiles need psychological help and pedophilia is a sexual orientation, then all sexual orientations are mental disorders. That is the mess of things and claims that her video is making with everything she's saying and everything she's not saying. And she would never rationally make those arguments herself, but that is the logical fallacy that she fell into when she said, pedophilia is not a choice. Sexuality is not a choice. Therefore, pedophilia is a sexuality. I mean, I would think I don't even have to say as much as I'm saying right now to point out how much not sense this makes. But I also want to talk specifically about why what she's saying is so damn harmful. Dr. Doe is not the first person who has made the assertion that because pedophiles can't choose who they're attracted to, they are just like anyone else who can't choose who they're attracted to, and therefore should be accepted and welcomed into the LGBTQ plus community, and that pedophiles should be entitled to feel pride about their sexualities. Many people have made this argument. Many pedophiles have made this argument. And let me explain the difference. I've already explained that there is no sound logic behind the whole pedophilia is not a choice, therefore it's a sexuality thing. But just to explain a little further why pedophilia is not a sexuality, pedophilia is a, say it with me, paraphilic disorder. Sexual orientations are not psychological disorders. Pedophilia relies on a lack of consent because it necessarily involves children who are parties that are unable to consent. And sexualities, as in attraction between just two people of various genders or however many people of various genders, relies on consent, or it should, and where it isn't, it's a crime.
Yes, Your Honor.
And the LGBTQ plus community has been fighting tooth and nail to keep pedophilia maps out of the LGBTQ plus community. The LGBTQ plus community wants to be accepted, wants to be seen as legitimate and valid. The LGBTQ plus community wants to be accepted. The message is all about love. Love who you want. Be who you want to be. That's the message that the LGBTQ plus community is trying to embody. And when pedophiles try to insert themselves into their communities, the LGBTQ plus community tries very hard to stop that from happening. And not everybody knows that that's the case. A lot of people keep themselves very separate from queer communities and spaces and don't talk to queer people. People who are already trying to delegitimize the LGBTQ plus community in the media and in their personal lives, these are the kinds of things that those people are going to grab onto. And I mean, once again, people have been saying forever, like literally forever, that, oh, if we accept queer people, then why don't we just have sex with children, have sex with animals? That has been a line of logic that people have used for a really long time. And obviously, the key is consent. Children can't consent, animals can't consent. Two consenting adults of whatever configuration of genders can consent to each other, and that's the difference. In addition, queer people have been accused of being predators once again, forever. Like if you think about the bathroom debates where, trans and non-binary people want to be able to use the bathroom that matches their gender identity, makes them feel safe. And the naysayers will be like, well, obviously these people are just trying to gain access to a space that is designated for whatever binary gender it's dedicated to, so that they can be predatory towards the people in those bathrooms. Meanwhile, like, trans people literally just want to pee, or when you think about like a young queer girl in the queer locker room. That sounds amazing. It's a great name for a gay bar. Think about a young queer girl in the girls' locker room, and then people will say that she's a predator because she is attracted to women and women's bodies in certain contexts. The point is that the LGBTQ plus community has had to work very hard to have any kind of good standing in society or a good reputation. So Lindsay Doe comparing pedophilia and sexual orientation and then calling herself an ally is just mad, because it is literally the exact opposite of what the LGBTQ plus community has been fighting for so long. And again, this is somebody who holds a position of power. She is well respected, and people trust her information.
They probably also can't bring themselves to talk to you about it. Virped is like the only way that they can spend time out of the closet. And as a community of allies, I know you're aware of what a difference it can make for people to acknowledge who they are.
Here she dares, has the audacity to use the phrase "in the closet," referring to being a pedophile and not feeling safe about talking to anybody or being yourself, you know? And she says, she makes an appeal to the emotions of people who are either queer or see themselves as allies, and says, you may relate to this emotion and this feeling of not being able to talk about your situation. And doesn't that make you feel sorry for them? But more than that, she's saying that if you don't feel accepting towards them or welcoming towards them, then you're not a good ally. And she's actually not even just trying to make an emotional argument that pedophiles feel like they can't be themselves, and you might have felt like you couldn't be yourself, and trying to build an empathy there. No, she's actively saying that pedophiles are you, and that if you don't accept and welcome pedophiles, then you're not an ally to the LGBTQ plus community at all. And it's also another association fallacy that pedophiles have to hide who they are, queer people have to hide who they are, and because they share that experience, that is even more reason for pedophiles to be accepted as part of the LGBTQ plus community. This last point is a little weird. It really comes out of left field. But one of the last things she says is that
it's not about telling little kids to not get in cars with strangers or advising women not to stare at dark. Nothing that victims do causes abuse.
She compares saying to women, don't go out at dark, don't go out when it's dark, or don't go to certain places, to saying to a child, don't get into a stranger's car, right? One of these things is educating a minor who may not know any better on how to keep themselves safe, how to not do something that will put them in direct harm. And one of these things is saying to women that they should limit their own right to freedom of movement so that they don't get attacked by men. So saying to a child, don't get into a stranger's car, is not placing limitations on their right to freedom of movement. It's just informing a child that they can't trust everyone and that they should do this thing to be safe. Doe's intended point that pedophiles should be able to access help so that they remain non-offending is fair and fine, and I take no issue with it. But in the process, she created this absolute jumbled mess of claims that seem to amount to pedophilia is a fetish, pedophilia is something people need help for, pedophilia is a sexual orientation, and then a whole bunch of weird conflations between them. It bolsters the belief that queer people are predators. It is the exact opposite of the message that queer people are trying to put out. She clearly states that pedophiles deserve no judgment.
I personally try not to judge either.
Right? Because she said she doesn't judge offending or non-offending pedophiles. And pedophiles deserve to feel pride. So the flaw began with Dr. Lindsay Doe, Doctor of Philosophy Lindsay Doe, not accurately clarifying that pedophilia is a paraphilic disorder, which would have changed most of everything in this video. Her second mistake was falsely claiming that pedophilia is a sexuality through a wild slew of logical fallacies and appeals to emotions, randomly grasping at straws of things that the two have in common. And she does this without taking into account all of the discourse surrounding maps and map pride and the LGBTQ plus community and the left and the right. At the end of it, if you're not on team pedophile, you're not compassionate, you're not rational, you're not empathetic, you're not an ally. Just completely ignores all of the rhetoric around the LGBTQ plus community trying to keep maps out. Because, number one, not all pedophiles are non-offending. Not all maps are going to be non-offending. And no. I'm not even going to say if we were to, no. Because sexuality is an identity, it's a thing about a person, it's a thing that's true, it's a thing that harms no one, it's a thing that's nobody's business. And pedophilia is a crime and a psychological disorder. It is something that harms children. It is not a sexuality. There is no reason why pedophilia should be thought of even anywhere close to the same paragraph or essay as LGBTQ plus community. To put it short and sweet, yes, pedophiles should be able to seek help for their psychological disorder. No, pedophiles should not be proud. Pedophiles should not have pride in their attraction to non-consenting parties, children. Pedophiles are not welcomed or welcome in LGBTQ plus spaces. They're two separate issues. The fact that I felt that I had to make this video and put them in one sentence is terrible. If you know who John and Hank Green are, they're your unproblematic uncles. Why is this on your network, Hank Green? Why? I'm stunned. I'm stunned that this video was filmed. I'm stunned that nobody was like, are you sure? I'm stunned that it was uploaded. I'm stunned that it didn't receive the worst feedback. I'm stunned that it's still up. I can't believe it. So if you want to share this video or just tweet about this on your own, try to draw some attention to this. But I mean, the only reason that I'm saying this is because I want this video taken down. I really do. So if you see this and you want that too, then maybe we can both just do one little extra thing about it and share this video, tweet it at Hank and John. I don't know. Cool. Thank you for watching this, everybody. I hope that my videos continue to get better and better. I'm trying my best with equipment and just effort and everything. I'm really enjoying making videos right now. I have so many ideas. So stick with me. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you like me, want to see more from my channel, you can click the subscribe button down below. And I make new videos every now and then. Thanks for watching. I love you. Goodbye.